Good morning. In Jesus' parable of the sheep and goats in Matthew chapter 25, the sheep who were welcomed to God's kingdom said, "Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And when was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it we saw you sick or in prison and visited you?" And the king will answer them, "Truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it to me." In the same parable, the goats who were damned to eternal punishment said, "Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison, and did not take care of you?" Then he will answer them, "Truly I tell you, just as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me." The question for us today is, who are the hungry and thirsty and stranger and sick and imprisoned people in our community and in our country? And how are we treating them? Now, I'll get back to the Bible in a bit, but bear with me. First, I'm going to oversimplify American history for our 4th of July weekend. Now, no nation is perfect. No people is perfect. No history is perfect. As Christians, we believe with Paul that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And that all means all, including us individually and as a community and as a nation. That said, here's my short and sweet history of the United States. The American history I learned in school and watching movies growing up here in the United States. In the Declaration of Independence of July 4th, 1776, our forebears declared, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." The history of the U.S. can be seen as a struggle to realize this ideal, not just for a few people, but for all people. When we say the Pledge of Allegiance, we end with liberty and justice for all. Do we really mean it? Think of some of our big wars and conflicts. Again, oversimplifying. In the Revolutionary War, we fought against tyranny, the rule of one person as a king, a tyrant, an authoritarian ruling over others. In the Civil War, we fought against the practice of keeping people as slaves based on the color of their skin or their national origin. In World War II, we fought against Nazism and other forms of fascism. Now, as the dictionary, the American Heritage Dictionary, defines fascism, it's a political regime having totalitarian aspirations ideologically based on a relationship between business and the centralized government, business and government control of the marketplace, repression of criticism or opposition, a leader cult, and exalting the state above individual rights. Such regimes usually try to achieve popularity by a strongly nationalistic appeal, often mixed with racism. End quote. Now, we fought against fascism in World War II. We fought the Nazis. And then during the Cold War, we held the Soviet-Russian Empire at bay, keeping it from taking over Europe and the rest of the world, right? We fought against fascism. We fought against communism. In the civil rights movement of the last century, the 1950s and 60s especially, we struggled to expand freedom to include all people regardless of the color of our skin. How things have changed so rapidly. When I was growing up, when in a movie, an officer or a military person was stopping people on the streets and saying, "Papers, please," they were the bad guys. Nazis or communists ready to abduct and disappear good people. When I was growing up, countries known as police states, controlling people with massive secret police forces, they were the bad guys. Communist and fascist authoritarian governments. When I was a kid, the guys with masks and body armor were the bad guys. like the stormtroopers in their white helmets and armor in Star Wars, anonymously oppressing the people of the galaxy in the name of the Emperor. Of course, some of this has always been a part of our story. Can you think of people in American history who wore white masks and abducted and disappeared, i.e. murdered people? Now, I'm not going to be politically partisan here, but I'm also not going to be politically correct. We need to speak the truth. We need to speak plainly. We need to use clear language. No pussyfooting around. The dictionary defines a concentration camp like this. Again, American Heritage Dictionary. A concentration camp is a camp where persons are confined, usually without hearings and typically under harsh conditions, often as a result of their membership in a group the government has identified as suspect, including political prisoners, prisoners of war, refugees. Any prison to which people are sent without due process of law, without actually being tried, convicted, and sentenced for a crime, is a concentration camp by definition. Now, that big bill was passed this last week, and I'm not being politically partisan here. I'll let you decide if all of that is good policy or not. I am no policy expert. But I want us to have eyes wide open to be honest about what's happening. From what I've read, the major parts of this bill are three, and there's probably others. But one, massive cuts to taxes for millionaires and billionaires effective immediately. Now, again, good or bad, we will pay the interest on that added debt in our federal taxes. This bill will reportedly increase our debt by $4 trillion. Right now, 39 cents of every dollar of your federal taxes goes to pay interest on our debt. And much of that debt is from tax cuts for the last few decades for the super rich. So every year we're paying interest, mostly to the rich, on the debt we accrued by cutting the taxes of the rich. Again, good or bad, I'll let you decide. The second element of this bill, massive tax cuts to Medicare and Medicaid that are set to go into effect after next year's midterm elections, very conveniently. If you or a loved one rely on Medicare or Medicaid for health care, keep that in mind and plan accordingly. Find out what's coming down the pike for you and your loved ones and others. Don't be blindsided by it. Remember, it's coming around the end of 2026, beginning of 2027. Third thing in this massive budget bill, there was a massive increase to the budget of ICE to create a masked secret police force to round up the indigenous peoples of the Americas who live in the U.S. and put them in concentration camps before trying to deport them overseas to prisons that we also fund. Now follow the money. Some people are going to get very rich off this new system and perhaps already are getting rich from it. Now, a little historical background. In Germany in the 1930s, the first people put in concentration camps were the political opponents of the Nazis. Then they imprisoned undocumented immigrants, particularly the Romani people, sometimes wrongly called gypsies. At the same time, the Nazis also imprisoned those deemed mentally ill and LGBTQ plus people. Finally, and most infamously, the Nazis targeted Jewish people. All of those people were deemed illegal by the German government, and the stated goal by the Nazis was to deport them for the sake of law and order. But when mass deportation became impractical, how do you deport all these millions of people to where? They switched to mass murder. And in the end, 6 or 7 million Jews and 3 million non-Jews at least were murdered in concentration camps and extermination camps. Now, I'm not saying that exactly the same thing will happen in the U.S., but I am saying we need to have eyes wide open. After World War II, many Germans said they didn't know about the Holocaust being carried out by their government with their tax dollars at all those camps. Now, we will not have that excuse if anything similar happens here, as our government continues to round up and imprison undocumented and documented Indigenous Americans and others, and as anti-Semitic and other kinds of racist speech and acts are on the rise in our country, we need to be vigilant and keep awake. Just this past week, there was a talk of reinstituting a kind of slavery on American farms and factories, with owners having responsibility for undocumented workers working for them. This is not a path to documentation or citizenship, a form of slavery, or at least indentured servitude. Again, we have to follow the money. When my ancestors came to the U.S., 1870s, 1880s, they came from Norway and Sweden. And when they came, they were documented because the U.S. government documented them after they got here. Undocumented immigrants in America today are undocumented not by their choice, but because our government system is broken, and it's broken on purpose because some employers profit from having undocumented workers that they can exploit. And it's not that undocumented immigrants are bad people. They desperately want to be documented, but our system does not let them. Often they were enticed to come to our country with promises of work because indeed our nation needs them, needs their work, needs their all the contributions they make to our society. But then we put up roadblocks to make it impossible for them to get documented, unless, of course, they're rich folks, then they find a way. There are too many people making a buck off of the lack of documentation. The solution to dealing with our undocumented immigrants in our nation is to document them, get them going on a path to citizenship if they're good, productive folks, and so on, which most of them are. And all of this is only going to intensify as concentration camps are built with our tax dollars and minimal oversight. Again, who's going to be running these concentration camps? Who's going to be profiting from them? What kind of quotas are going to be in place to fill them? And all of that is on our tax bill. We're paying for that. And why? As a people and as a nation, going back to Jesus' parable of the sheep and the goats in Matthew 25. But as a people and as a nation, are we the sheep or are we the goats? Are we caring for the least of these, Jesus' brothers and sisters, or not? Because as Jesus says, truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it to me. And just as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. Remember that Jesus was himself an undocumented indigenous immigrant as a child, as an infant, illegally fleeing with his parents from a tyrant, Herod, to the land of Egypt. And right now, Jesus is our neighbors, especially our Latino brothers and sisters, but also all who are at risk, all the hungry and homeless and imprisoned, all the strangers and aliens and immigrants. So are we sheep or are we goats? And if we are sheep, then what are we going to do? to stand with all of our neighbors. Amen.